Excited din po kasi since yun ay bagong strategy, tapos yun, luckily naman yung principal namin, supportive din naman po doon sa pag-adapt ng program.
Marami pong nagtatanong, ano ba yung bagong DLP-LES? So, kailangan pa din po namin i-explain. And then, pati na po din sa mga students po namin na ano po itong bagong approach na ito.
Doon sa parallel scheme, ang ginawa namin parang multi-grade. Habang nag-i-explain po ako sa grade 3, yung grade 4, gumagawa sila ng learning activity sheet.
Traditionally, parang yun, chismis doon, chismis dito, tapos palibot-libot. So, nang dumating yung DLP-LES, within 40 minutes, matapos o hindi matapos, kukunin na yan. So, pag kakuha na nila ng learning activity sheets, upo na kaagad, sulat na kaagad. Wala ka nang marinig na kung anong ingay kasi wala silang masayang na oras na matapos talaga nila yung kanilang concept na sinusulat.
Tumaas naman po ang kanilang grades. Nakikita po namin na dahil sa dami ng learning activity sheet na kanilang nasasagutan, may improvement po sa kanilang permanship. Kaya na nilang sagutan yung mga learning activity sheet kahit wala pang explanation ng teacher. Prepare ko po ang aking lesson ahead of time at wala pong nasasayang na aking oras. Kung ako ay nagfa-facilitate naman sa ibang subject, nag-check po ako ng kanilang mga lamig. Yun po, nasagot po ang kakulangan namin sa classroom at kakulangan sa live teacher.
Mas maganda na ganun kasi less cost, tapos less time. So yun, at saka kailangan natin maging independent ang mga kabataan natin.
Dati kasi pinipilit lang namin yung mga bata na pumasok sa alive. Mula nung nag-umpisa kaming mag-adopt ng DLP, hindi na po namin sila tinatawag. Sila na lang po ang pumupunta sa live classroom. Huwag po tayong matakot na ma-failure. Mas matakot po tayo na hindi mabigyan ng chance na mag-adapt ng bagong strategy or approach.
Pagsisimula, wala kaming estudyante. So kami talaga yung pumupunta sa bahay nila. Nagsi-sales talk talaga kami. Sales talk kung ano ang kalaga ng edukasyon para sa kanila. Every year, mag-map kami, pumupunta kami sa kanilang bahay. Sari-sari kasi kaming mga pakulo. Actually, kinakailangan talagang makasustain kami ng 75 learners in a year. Kasi yun ang DepEd order namin. Bilang isang guro ng mobile teacher, dapat may 75 learner ka. Before, nagtuturo ako sa basurahan mismo, sa chapel. Ang ginagawa ko talaga, to be honest, binibigyan ko sila ng puhunan. Kasi, ang hirap kasing i-compete yung education sa pagkain nila araw-araw. With the help of the DLP, it is one individualized instruction. Student-centeredness pa, nagagawa ng mga estudyante ito na kahit walang supervision, close supervision ng teacher. It takes time to change yung mga estudyante mo. So na-appreciate nila na kahit palagi silang nagsusulat, meron ding changes. Ako yung nagtuturo talaga sa basic education nila. Nag-take sila ng elementary day pass. And after a year, nag-take na naman sila ng high school day pass. Maraming pumasa actually, sir. Sa akin, ang elementary ko 15 ang nag-take, 15 ang pumasa. Sa high school, if I'm not mistaken, siguro mga 33 ang nag-take, 30 ang pumasa. After marami nang pumasa, hindi na kami nagbahay-bahay na ngayon dahil sila na pumupunta sa amin. So yun ang advantage. Pag marami ka ng product, sila na nag-i-enroll ng kanilang sarili.
Gustong-gusto ko talaga magpatuloy ng pag-aral kasi marami po talaga akong pangarap eh. Hindi mo masasabi na huli na lahat kasi meron pang paraan para mapagpatuloy ka mag-aral. Message ko lang kang ma'am, kahit mga makulit kami, minsan may ingay, ang akin lang, wag kang mag-give up ma'am sa amin. Kasi hindi kami nandito kung wala ka. Saka ikaw lang talaga yung nakakatulong sa amin para mapatuloy namin yung pangarap namin.
Palagi kong sinasabi sa mga estudyante ko na ang kahirapan ay hindi hadlang sa pagkakaroon ng katuparan ng inyong mga pangarap. Ang mangguro ay handang tumulong sa kanila with all open hearts and all open hands. Meron na ring mga bagong teknolohiya at mayroong mga teknik ang guro ngayon na mas mapapagaan ang kanilang pag-aaral. So why not pursue and complete their education para naman maiba ang kanilang mga estado ng pamumuhay. Ang pag-aaral talaga ang naging isang solusyon. Hindi mo makikita ito sa isang idlap lang, pero pag nakapagtapos ka na, maraming mga oportunidad na maibibigay sa iyo.
I am Desi Magnaye, Junior High School Principal of Davao Christian High School, VMAPA Campus, and CVIF-DLP practitioner for 15 years. In 2005, we decided to adopt it in our high school department. CVIF-DLP is mainly an independent learning program. If in the traditional class setup, 70 to 80% of the class period is spent on lecture discussions, in CVIF-DLP, lectures or teacher-centered activities only comprise to 20 to 30% of the class period. The remaining 70 to 80% is left for students to independently complete learning activities. We follow the 4 DLP program components. In a traditional class, a math teacher teaching 4 classes will have to be in the classroom 4 times. However, in the DLP setup, a math teacher can teach 2 to 3 classes at the same time with the help of facilitators. A facilitator is also a teacher teaching another subject whose main role is to ensure that the activities prepared by the math teacher are done by the students. With this setup, we automatically promote learner-centered classrooms because teachers cannot be in 2 places at one time. The teacher needs to prepare independent student activities, which are mostly written activities, which allow the students to discover the lesson on their own without any prior lecture. All these activities are submitted at the end of the period so that the teacher can see how much the students already know or if they have any misconceptions about the topic. Thus, their outputs are used as basis on how the teacher will proceed to the discussion to address their difficulties or who among the students need remediation. All these activities are also filed in a comprehensive student portfolio. To ensure that our students get adequate rest, we follow a midweek non-academic day where MAPE subjects are taught on a Wednesday, including other activities such as chapel hour, small group sessions, and clubs and organizations. We also adhere to a no homework policy. All these components work hand in hand in providing our students habit-forming protocols to give them signal that it is already time to learn. When the crisis was ensuing, it was expected that classes would be suspended. We were fortunate that a few days before class suspension, we were able to set up accounts for our students in Google Classroom, a common online learning platform, and inform them the possibility of using this in replacement of regular face-to-face sessions in school. We also had to meet our teachers to make sure they are familiar on how to use it. I remember requesting one of our computer teachers to give a crash course on the Google Classroom interface. Succeeding reminders and updates were done online using Messenger or Zoom because the quarantine did not allow us to meet physically. Because we have been used to the DLP system, our transition to an online platform has been more manageable. I think what is important to emphasize here is the readiness of our students to do independent learning, whether they are inside or outside the classroom. The essential things that were done in face-to-face instructions were still integrated in the online setup. For example, the LAS that the students need to learn for the day were uploaded by the teachers in the online learning platform. These learning activities are to be copied by hand, and once they are done, they submit a photo or PDF file of their work using the online learning platform. With this setup, teachers can determine if students have understood the lesson and think of different interventions that can be made for the online discussion. Discussions were usually lifted from relevant videos from YouTube or pre-recorded discussions of the teacher. Teachers can also provide meaningful feedback to some activities which allow the students to redo and resubmit their work. Assessments had to be done online too. All these activities were carefully selected so that students can still accomplish them and learning continues. To address the challenge of internet connectivity, we had to choose activities which do not require very high bandwidth. In terms of schedule, Wednesdays were still mostly non-academic tasks, and modifications were made to ensure our students and teachers are not bombarded with a lot of activities at once, allowing them to cope better amid the health crisis. Students who have missing works were contacted. Parents and guardians were encouraged to remind their kids about their daily activities too. For the very few students who have problems with connectivity, we are giving them enough time to accomplish their work, especially that obtaining physical copies is still not possible due to the enhanced community quarantine. Whether online or face-to-face, our exposure to DLP rests on the principle that our students can learn concepts independently. When our students see an LAS, they already know that it is time for learning. Because of the online setup, we can say that the main teacher-student interaction happens in the LAS, which are prepared by the teacher to facilitate learning. A certain lesson can be composed of many LAS to ensure that students can learn on their own. On a survey we conducted to evaluate online classes, most of our students know that they are capable of learning independently and have put a great deal of effort in learning even in an online setup. A lot of them also said that they were challenged to learn more than expected, but this did not stop them because they feel confident about learning a new material. In the absence of regular teacher intervention, peer tutoring becomes very strong and valuable. I know of some students who made use of group chats to discuss lessons and drills on their own. Moving forward, we plan to continue with our online setup given that we still cannot conduct face-to-face classes. Changes have to be made to provide a better structure for our students in terms of the posting of materials online, better teacher-student online consultation, and streamlining of activities to cover all the essentials. Creating an online learning guidelines might also help, as well as equipping our teachers with the necessary skills useful in online learning. For students who have connectivity problems, we plan to provide them hard copies which their parents can get from school and submit in a specified time. Thus, DLP is very much applicable with or without the use of technology. In my many years of exposure to CVIF-DLP, I have always heard how it is a disaster-resilient educational program because it was used in some schools in Cagayan de Oro City during Typhoon Sendong in 2011, in Bohol during the 2013 earthquake, during the Marawi siege in 2017, and many more. This year, we are all affected by the global pandemic, and we have no choice but to suspend classes indefinitely. Classes have to be done at home, and with the help of online platforms, we are able to conduct our classes the CVIF-DLP way. Students still write daily learning activities by hand and answer them on their own. What they were supposed to learn in school, they're able to do at home. I believe our transition to online classes have been smoother because our students are used to doing things independently. Their exposure to independent learning make them more disciplined, responsible, and task engaged. I hope more schools can look at CVIF-DLP as an alternative, especially that it might take some time before things go back to normal because of COVID-19. As a formal school, DLP has been relevant to us because it has proven its effectiveness in ensuring learning even in such a time as this. A teacher can teach his or her students all at the same time, and because activities are individualized, he or she can identify students who need extra help and provide the needed assistance. More than the content coverage, what we value more is developing our students to become independent or disciplined learners. When students are capable of learning on their own, they can learn anything they want, and they will not give up easily when hardships come their way.
I am Mr. Renato Igayetano Jr., the District House Coordinator of Bacnotan District. The DLP was used in the Division of La Union after the seminar happened last August 2019. So we use the DLP because we all know that it is very useful in part of the teacher and for the learners. Because when we are using the LAS or the learning activity sheets, we use it in our learners and they can appreciate it even they are engaging in different part-time job or house chores that they need to do habang sila ay nag-aaral. So pwede nilang hatiin ang kanilang oras sa pag-aaral at sa kanilang mga gawain o panghanap buhay. Because through DLP, we are using the LAS. Sa LAS, makikita natin na kahit hindi na i-explain ni teacher ang mga activity, they can learn by their own. Kailangan natin nilang basahin, kailangan nilang intindihin yung mga nakasulat sa learning activity sheets. So, once na naintindihan na nila ito, they can answer the given question written on the LAS. House is in informal setting. So, bihira rin po sa amin yung formal setting na talagang nagkaklase yung buong klase. So, ang house po kasi is pumupunta kami sa mga barangay before at doon kami nagkaklase sa mga barangay hall nila. So, meaning to say, walang mga formal classes. Ang setting po namin is laging informal. But, about the interaction, so of course, kakaiba naman po yung interaction ng bata ng oral at ng online. Kasi ang nangyari na nga po sa amin nun is just sending LAS to them. Wala nang interaction. They can only answer the LAS and I think it's too much enough for them to understand the lesson. Kasi kompleto naman po kung titignan niyo yung mga LAS namin. Kompleto naman po doon. Kahit sabi ko nga, kahit hindi na explain ni teacher, they can easily understand the given short explanation and they can answer by their own the given questions. Yes, we conducted online classes, but through our messenger only. We don't have yet the page or talagang source from internet. But through the use of LAS, napadali talaga yung activity ng mga bata na kailangan namin i-submit for the regional because nakaprepare na nga kami ng mga LAS, mga ready-made LAS na ginawa na namin before pa. So kaya medyo hindi kami nahirapan that time na nagkaroon ng pandemic. Ito yung naging isang problema namin noon kasi may mga bata na that time hindi makapag-submit kasi nagawa naman ng mga paraan para makahabol sila sa mga lessons. So, what I said a while back, nagsisend kami ng mga LAS sa mga messenger and then in return, they picture the outputs and then send to our personal account. So, ganun po ang nangyari. So, doon naman sa mga hindi nakapag-submit ng mga requirements, so nag-create kami ng mga learning activity sheets para send sa kanila or yung ang nakipag-coordinate na kami sa mga barangay checkpoint ng bawat barangay. So, iniiwan namin sa kanila doon and then personal na ihahatid sa kanilang mga tahanan. So, ganun din yung mga outputs. Iniiwan nila sa mga barangay checkpoint and then pag sinabi namin na i-collect na, so dinadaanan namin doon sa mga barangay checkpoint. As a teacher of ALS, hindi ako masyadong dun sa online class. Kasi sabi nga namin, hindi lahat ng bata is capable na bumili ng mga gadgets, bumili ng mga loads, magpakabit ng mga internet. Lalo na nung time ngayon, wala silang pagkakakitaan. Kasi mostly ng mga ALS learners kasi mga nagtatrabaho. May mga kanya-kanya na pinagkakabalahan. So, nung time ng napaka-strict na walang makakalabas, so hindi sila nakakapagtrabaho. Hindi sila kumikita ng pera, so talagang pahirapan sila makapag-loan. Our plan is to print more LAS for our students, and we are thankful for our LGU because even wala pang pandemic, talagang they are very supportive. To Haknat ng La Union, LGU is very supportive for printing of our LAS. But this time, of course, mas lalo na siguro 100% ang support ng LGU. About online classes, maybe it is hard for them because alam natin na yung mga bata ng house, yung mga learners ng house, they are not capable to buy gadgets. They are not capable to buy loads or connection of internet. So talagang I really suggest na it is better to use LAS na lang DLP and LAS for learners. So it's very relevant, the DLP, lalo na ngayon na nasa pandemic tayo. I'm sure and I can prove that DLP is very useful this time kasi yun nga yung more on learning activities na kailangan ng bata.
Good day, everyone. I'm Christy Gomez, currently the school head of Balenti High School, and we are Dynamic Learning Program implementing. If for me, the dynamic learning program is a good innovation when it comes to teaching and learning process because it lessens the work of the teacher, but at the same time, it develops the totality of the learner, wherein they become independent learners. Upon learning about this dynamic learning program, napag-isipan po namin kasama yung tatlong teacher ko sa high school na kung i-adapt ba namin itong dynamic learning program ito. Kasi po, as we all know, yung mga parents at saka yung mga teachers and also the learners, sanay po sila sa traditional way of teaching. Pero dahil po sa kakulangan ng guro at saka ng mga aklat, naisipan po namin na bakit hindi namin gamitin. Yung work ng teacher is gumawa lang siya ng learning activity sheets na kung saan pag nakagawa na siya, yun na ang magiging lesson plan niya. At yung mga bata naman, yun na rin po yung sasagutan nila at doon na sila magpo-focus. So sa katagalan po ng paggamit namin, nasanay na rin yung mga bata. At pati yung kanilang writing ability ay na-develop. Pati rin po yung pagkakaroon namin ng MAPE Day, dito po nahasa yung ability ng mga bata. May mga bata na nagkaroon ng interest sa music, sa dance, meron din sa sports na kung saan sumasali na po kami sa mga sport events ng division at nananalo naman po sila. At pagdating po sa program sa school, yung mga dating mga bata na nahihiyang mag-perform sa harap ng mga kapwa nilang estudyante at mga magulang, nakakapag-perform na po. Since gumamit po kami ng DNP from second quarter na last school year 2018-2019, so nakita naman po namin yung comparison when it comes to academic ng mga bata. May mga bata na sa first grading wala lang. But upon doing the DNP, nakita naman namin na naging achievers sila. So, masasabi ko na malaki din yung naging impact ng DNP sa mga bata dito sa Balantihan School. Dahil nga po nagkaroon tayo ng pandemic crisis na ganito, naisipan ko din po na gamitin din ang DNP sa Balantihan Elementary School. Dahil nga po modular yung teaching and learning process na gagamitin namin, so maganda po ang DNP sa palagay ko po. And ang naiisip ko pong gawin dito is initin yung mga parents muna bago namin i-implement ito para ipakilala naman namin sa kanila ang dynamic learning program. Since nakikita naman nila yung kinalabasan nito sa high school, siguro naman po mai-encourage sila na gayahin din ito. At tulungan din nila yung kanilang mga anak na sumagot sa mga learning activity sheets na ipapadala namin sa mga bata. Sa paggamit po namin ngayon, ngayong new normal ng dynamic learning program, malaki po ang maitutulong sa amin ng mga magulang sa pag-guide sa mga bata sa paggawa ng kanilang learning activity sheets. So since hindi naman po expert yung mga parents natin sa paggawa ng activity sheets or yung pagsagot dun sa mga activities na yun, pwede po nilang i-guide yung kanilang mga anak sa paggamit ng internet. Pwedeng gamitin ng mga magulang upang ma-monitor nila yung kanilang mga anak ay yung tinatawag po nating learning activity monitoring sheet na kung saan nakalista po dyan yung mga learning activity sheets na ginagawa ng kanilang mga anak at matututukan po nila kung alin pa doon sa mga nakalista doon ang hindi pa nagagawa ng kanilang mga anak. Sa barangay naman po, pwede po namin ipakilala din sa kanila ang dynamic learning program kung saan pwede din po silang sumuporta sa amin lalo na sa pagbibigay ng mga kagamitan na kinakailangan namin sa pag-print ng mga learning activity sheets ng mga bata. And also sa Department of Education po, since hindi naman po kami nagdi-deviate sa curriculum guide na in-implement ng department, so inaasahan din po namin na pwede namin ilapit ang DLP sa iba't ibang mga paaralan. Katulong po ng aming district supervisor at ng iba pang punong-puno sa aming distrito.
Bataan, pag-asa ng bayan nagmamalasakit sa kalikasan.
Maliban po sa mga magulang na malaki po ang maitutulong sa pagganap po ng dynamic learning program na to, malaki din po ang pasasalamat namin sa Smart Communities dahil ipinakilala niya sa amin ang DLP. And sana po magkaroon pa tayo ng mahabang pagsasama pa.
For today, I'll be giving input, especially dun sa mga writers natin. Tomorrow, we will start a write shop proper. So you will be allowed to write at least 2 LAS so that you will have that feeling on how to write an LAS. Then, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, di na po ako masyado nagsasalita dyan. Puro trabaho na po yan. Hopefully, matapos yung material at nandyan yung taga LRMDS, makita niya at sana mo ma-appreciate kung pwedeng magamit.
Yung sasabi ko lang po sa learning activity sheet is a great help po para sa amin, especially po doon sa mga non-IP teachers. Kasi even they are not speakers, may translation doon yung answer sheet kanina. So, madali nilang naintindihan kung ano ang ipapagawa nila sa mga IP pupils. Para naman sa mga pupils, madali din para sa kanila kasi kung reader na po sila, madali nilang maintindihan yung kung ano yung nasa learning activity sheet. At tulad nung kanina po, yung fast learner ko, pagbasa niya po doon sa MTB, so I think ma'am 2 minutes lang po na sagot niya lahat yung set A ng MTB.
Dako kayong tabang kini para sa grade 3. Kay naa ma-enjoy mga bata pa nga dili medyo slow pa sa pagbasa, then naa po'y mga bata nga fast na. So magamit kini sa mga fast learner habang ang mga nagapractice pa nga mga bata maka-focus ko sa ilaha.
para po sa akin, mas lalong maintindihan ng mga IP pupils dito po yung learning activity sheet na binigyan niyo po ngayong hapon.
Hello, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. I invite you all to pray. Let us remind ourselves that we are in the presence of the Lord. Panginoon, maraming salamat po sa panibagong araw na ibinigay ninyo sa amin dito sa CVIF DLP Web Forum. Masaya at payapa ang aming loob dahil alam namin na kasama namin kayo sa lahat ng aming mga gawain. We are confident that in your name, O God, there is power, and we will be successful in ensuring that no learner will be left behind in implementing education in the new normal. In your name, O Lord, there is healing, even as we speak good health, protection, and safety are flowing to us, to our viewers right now. Lord, bless our nation and the world. Amen. Good afternoon and welcome to day 2 of our 3-day web forum. I'm David Rioferio, your host. To those who tuned in yesterday, thank you for joining us again today. At para doon sa mga ngayon palang manonood, we share with you this web forum entitled No Learner Left Behind, Education for All in the New Normal. This is about how the CVIF-Dynamic Learning Program, or DLP, can help support the smooth implementation of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan by the Department of Education. Yesterday, I'm glad to share with you that we had around 200,000 views, 4,000 comments, 700 shares via Facebook. Thank you. Masyadong madami. We are being watched all over the world. The farthest is from Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Aldura International School. Hi to Ms. Hermita Sabiniano. We are broadcasting live via Facebook pages of DepEd Philippines, Dynamic Learning Program, Smart Communities, Now You Know, Gabay Guro, Yellow Boat of Hope Foundation, PLDT Smart Foundation, World Vision, and Dynamic Learning Program. YouTube channel. Yesterday, we introduced that the Dynamic Learning Program supports education in the new normal, how it works in different scenarios, whether you have device and internet, or even without device or internet. And then the roles of the principal, teacher, parent, student, and LGU, and finally, the easy steps on how to implement and get started with DLP. Today, our panelists will share with us best practices on how to implement DLP in the new normal. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge our partners, the partners of CVIF DLP, the Department of Education, AHA Learning Center, Gabay Guro, PLDT Smart Foundation, Now You Know, Save the Children, SMART, World Vision, Yellow Boat of Hope Foundation, and all the public and private schools and ALS communities that are implementing the Dynamic Learning Program. Maraming salamat po. Just some reminders, the web forum will run for 3 days until tomorrow, Friday, June 19 from 2 to 4 p.m. There are different topics every day, so please make sure to tune in again tomorrow. The web forum is free. Libre po siya. There is no need to register. If you have questions, please write it in the comments section of Facebook. Syempre, no, please do share the event to others whom you feel can learn from this forum. To begin with, let us listen to the message of the Department Head, Vice President of Smart Communications, Mr. Darwin Flores. Good afternoon, Mr. Flores.
Hello, David. Good afternoon. Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, kahapon nga, we were able to hear from the founders of DLP, si Chris and Marivic Bernido, on the basic concepts of the DLP. And basically sinabi nila na this is student-centric with little or no intervention. It promotes independent learning. It teaches learners how to learn. And it's been in practice for the last 18 years. So since 2002 hanggang ngayon, in practice na siya. It's been applied in Zamboanga siege, sa Bohol earthquake, sa Cagayan de Oro Sendong typhoon. It was used in Basilan. In fact, in our experience, it was in Basilan that the governor tested the DLP given the conflict situation. And sabi nga namin, after 3 years of implementation, there was an assessment and they were able to produce scholars ng DOST after doing so, that if it can work in Basilan, it can work anywhere. So today, we will be hearing from the experience of how DLP is being implemented in elementary, in SPED, in junior and senior high school, in college, and in ALS, in both public and private settings, with or without technology. So let's all watch and listen and learn. But my takeaway here is that the greatest contribution of DLP is really teaching our learners how to learn. Once we've done that, they can go full steam ahead to learn what's out there in the world. Now, one of the questions that's been raised maybe, and it's unspoken, is ano na yung mangyayari sa mga teachers? Ano yung gagawin nila? So we would liken DLP as like a basketball game of learning, where the players are your learners and the coach is your teacher. Hindi ba yung mga basketball players, sila naman yung naglalaro talaga. But the coach spots your strengths and weaknesses and where you can better improve your play. So napakalaki pa rin po ng role ng teacher in terms of assessing the progress of students and in terms of coaching. So let's go to day 2 and let's hear from our practitioners. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Darwin. Naalala ko, no, nung pumupunta sila sa ARMM at sa ibang malalayong lugar, talagang si Sir Darwin nangunguna yan parate. Kung minsan pa siya yung gusto niya mag-drive kahit walang driver. Basta lang alam mo yun, mapuntahan niya, mauna siya dun sa mga malalayong lugar na bibigyan ng DLP. Salamat po, Sir Darwin.
Thank you, Rian.
Our next speaker is a very busy man. That is why we are grateful that he agreed to be with us today. Please welcome the Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction of the Department of Education, Yusek Diosdado San Antonio.
Maraming salamat, David. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Sa ngalan po ng ating mahal na kalihim, Secretary Leonor Liling Magtolis Briones, the Department of Education wishes to say congratulations and thank you very much to the team that tries to orient as many people as possible on the alternative. I mean, one of the proven ways of delivering basic education services, the dynamic learning program of the Central Visayan Institute Foundation. So we're glad to be a part of this undertaking. We know that there is this thing called new normal, and the Department of Education has come up with a learning continuity plan that recognizes the need for multiple learning delivery modalities. And I think all of us are aware that when school year opens come August 24, we will not have face-to-face classes. So we will try to make sure that the youngsters we are expected to serve are still able to learn using diverse learning modalities. And we're so, personally, I agree that the strategy being utilized by the dynamic learning program is something that perhaps should also be done at a bigger scale in the Department of Education. So right now, even as we are busy preparing the self-learning modules, we feel that our fellow teachers will also be engaged in preparing us for the opening of the school year by doing more learning activity sheets, because we know that learning from home would be a bit different. Ako personally, pakiramdam ko, if we succeed in engaging the learners, in heightening the motivation of the youngsters to learn, even if we will do this via distance learning mode, we will still be able to effectively make the youngsters learn. The other point that I would like to add is, yes, we will hopefully learn about more details about the DLP. We hope that our fellow teachers, especially those serving the Department of Education, will recognize the need for like more intense ways of communicating with families. If we are going to make learning happen at home, nasabi na kanina ni Mr. Darwin, the teachers will still play a role, and I feel that we cannot do this if we will not communicate with families and even with the learners. So fellow teachers, I appreciate your openness and commitment to be a part of the Department of Education's effort in making sure that the youngsters of our country are able to learn even in this so-called COVID-19 emergency. Mabuhay po ang mga nagtataguyod ng Dynamic Learning Program, at asahan po ninyo na sa kagawaran ng edukasyon, hahayaan nating mag-innovate, mag-implement, mag-decide ang mga paaralan, ang mga kapwa natin guro sa paghahanap ng paraan kung paano mas magiging mabisa ang pagkakatuto ng mga bata. God bless.
Sir Dads, maraming salamat ho ha. Para ho sa mga nanonood ngayon, noong si Sir Dads ay regional director pa lang, isa siya sa mga kindest officials ng Department of Education. Teachers from his region will tell me, oh, alam mo ba si Sir Dads, walang arte yan, sumasakay yan ng tricycle papasok ng opisina. Tapos i-text mo lang siya, sasagot siya agad sa'yo. So thank you. We're so happy that you appreciate the program po, Dynamic Learning Program. Thank you, sir. Maraming salamat po.
God bless.
At yun nga po, maraming salamat USEC San Antonio, at maaasahan po ninyo, kami rin naman susuporta lahat ng bumubuo ng Dynamic Learning Program para sa Department of Education. So, before we go to today's panelists, let's first do a short recap for the benefit of those who just tuned in today, and as a refresher for those who were with us since yesterday. Please watch this video.
Tatalakayin natin sa videong ito ang mga paraan ng paggamit ng CVIF-Dynamic Learning Program o DLP sa tatlong konteksto. Una, kung ang mga guro at mag-aaral ay may device at internet. Ikalawa, kung mayroon silang device ngunit limited lang ang internet. At ikatlo ay kung walang access sa device at internet. Kung may device at internet connection ang guro at ang estudyante. Step 1. Ipapadala ni teacher ang learning activity sheet kada linggo sa mag-aaral gamit ang email o Facebook Messenger o iba pang online platform gaya ng Google Classroom o Microsoft Teams. Step 2. Kokopyahin ng mag-aaral ang natanggap na learning activity sheet sa isang blank sheet of paper. Uunawain ang lesson for the day at sasagutang mag-isa ang required exercises. Ito ay dapat matapos ng mag-aaral sa loob ng takdang oras na nakalaan para sa subject na iyon. Step 3. Kukunan ng litrato ng mag-aaral ang natapos na learning activity sheet at ipapadala ito pabalik kay teacher gamit ang email o Facebook Messenger o iba pang online platform gaya ng Google Classroom o Microsoft Teams. Ang hard copies ng learning activity sheets na natapos ay dapat i-compile ng mag-aaral sa isang folder kada subject. Step 4. Kapag natanggap na ni teacher ang natapos na learning activity sheet, maaari na siyang mag-online discussion sa mga mag-aaral gamit ang Facebook o Zoom o iba pang online platforms upang i-process ang lesson na natutunan ng mga mag-aaral ng mag-isa. Kung may device pero limited ang internet connection ng mga guro at ng mga estudyante, ang ibig sabihin ng limited internet connection ay gumagamit ng mobile data kaya't di maaari ang full online classes. Step 1. Itatype ng teacher ang learning activity para sa Facebook Messenger at ipapadala ito sa mag-aaral. Sa paraang ito ay hindi mababawasan ang load ng teacher at mag-aaral. Step 2. Kokopyahin ng mag-aaral ang natanggap na learning activity sa isang blank sheet of paper. Uunawain ang lesson for the day at sasagutang mag-isa ang required exercises. Ito ay dapat matapos ng mag-aaral sa loob ng takdang oras na nakalaan para sa subject na iyon. Step 3. Itatype ng mag-aaral ang mga sagot sa exercises sa Facebook Messenger at ipapadala kay teacher. Ang hard copies ng learning activity sheets na natapos ay dapat i-compile ng mag-aaral sa isang folder kada subject. Step 4. Kapag natanggap na ni teacher ang sagot sa mga exercises para sa nakatakdang learning activity, maaari siyang mag-discuss sa mag-aaral gamit pa rin ang Facebook Messenger. Kung walang device at internet connection, Step 1. Ipiprint ng teacher ang mga learning activity sheets para sa isang linggo at ipapadala ang hard copy sa mag-aaral. Ito ay maaaring kunin ng mga magulang sa paaralan o di kaya sa tulong ng barangay ay ide-deliver ito sa kanilang bahay. Step 2. Kokopyahin ng mag-aaral ang natanggap na learning activity sa isang blank sheet of paper. Uunawain ang lesson for the day at sasagutang mag-isa ang required exercises. Ito ay dapat matapos ng mag-aaral sa loob ng takdang oras na nakalaan para sa subject na iyon. Step 3. Iko-compile ng mag-aaral ang mga natapos na learning activity sheets sa isang folder kada subject. Step 4. Sa tulong ng mga magulang o ng barangay, ibabalik sa teacher kada linggo ang mga natapos na learning activity sheets ng mag-aaral at papalitan ito ng mga bagong learning activity sheets para sa susunod na linggo. Kahit walang teacher intervention, may matututunan ang mag-aaral basta't ginagawa niya ang mga learning activities na nakatakda. Ang CVIF-Dynamic Learning Program o DLP ay maaaring gamiting pamamaraan ng pagtuturo kung may device at internet. Kung may device pero limited ang internet at kahit walang device o internet. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon sa CVIF Dynamic Learning Program, bisitahin lamang ang dlp.ph na website o hanapin lang ang Dynamic Learning Program sa Facebook o magpadala ng email sa learnsmart@smart.com.ph.
Ayan. So now we know that DLP as a strategy works if you plan to do online delivery and even if you go the modular way. We also saw what the roles of the stakeholders are. What's important to remember is that the goal of DLP is to develop independent student learners, which means that there should be no prior lecture from the teacher and that parents should refrain from doing the lessons of their children. Okay, again, as we are on the clock, we will start with our first panelist. If you have questions, just a reminder, please write them in the comments section and our panelists later will answer them after the Q&A portion. Mga kaibigan, ang common question sa dynamic learning program ay, is it applicable even for younger children who don't know how to write yet? And pwede rin ba ito sa special education? To answer those questions and to share their experience, and most importantly, to share how they plan to use DLP in the new normal, please welcome all the way from Dagupan, Pangasinan, the president of Escuela de Nuestra Señora de la Salette, Miss Marian Tan Lor.
Good afternoon.
Hi, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to share with you our CVIF-DLP practice for the Special Education Department of Escuela de Nuestra Señora de la Salette, otherwise known as La Salette School in Dagupan City, Pangasinan. But before anything else, let's just wait for a little while for the slides. There you go. Okay. But before anything else, let me give you a brief background of our school. La Salette School was established in 1989 by Dr. Lina Galvan Tan and Mr. William Tan, starting out with a handful of students from preschool to grade 6. It then expanded and opened its doors to the high school level the following year, and in 1992 to students with special needs. We became a Lasallian School Supervision Office supervised school from the year 2000 to our graduation in 2018. And we started implementing the CVIF-DLP in the year 2013. Last year, we celebrated our 30th founding anniversary as an educational institution. In these 30 years, majority of our existence was rooted in being a traditional school. However, we pride ourselves in the fact that we are the first school in Pangasinan to offer special education and the first school again to implement the CVIF-DLP methodology in all grade levels, including in our special education department. To be clear, there are two types of special education. One for the gifted and the other one for children with special needs. Our school focuses on the second category, and we have students with autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, learning disability, deaf, hearing impairment, and others. The important question here now is, how do we implement the CVIF-DLP in our special education program? I would like to start with our philosophy. In La Salette School, we see our special kids as different. Do you see that red ball on the screen? That is a special child. They are different, but not less. They have what others call and diagnose a disability. But for us, it is not a disability, but a different ability. It is for this reason that our SPED students who are mainstreamed in the regular classes answer the same learning activity sheets, follow the same schedules with minimal accommodations and modifications, without the aid of a shadow teacher. Let me repeat that, without the aid of a shadow teacher. For our students who are still unable to be mainstreamed, I would like to discuss how we go about it using the 4 non-negotiable components of this methodology. First, we have the parallel learning groups. For regular classes, there is one expert teacher who handles 2 to 3 classes simultaneously to promote independent learning. Unlike the regular classes though, we cannot just assign any facilitator because of the children's behavioral and emotional disposition and the SPED teacher's specialized skill to handle the case. We are, however, able to implement this by assigning one SPED teacher to 2 to 3 manageable SPED students whose abilities may be different but complement each other. We call these dyads or triads. In this case, the teacher first demonstrates to student 1 the task on hand. When student number 1 is able to follow the instructions and do the task, the teacher now moves on to student number 2 to do the same thing. Student number 1 is then given enough space and time to do the task independently, with the teacher still within the safe zone of monitoring the students, but not necessarily meddling on how the task should be accomplished. She then moves on to student number 3 and does the same thing. In this setup, the students are given their own individualized activities, enough opportunity, meaning the time and the space that they need to do the task independently. That's learning by doing. And number 3, the opportunity to socialize and learn from each other during group time. The teacher is also able to assist and journey with the group without being too overbearing while sticking to each child's individualized program. The second component is the activity-based domain learning. One of my all-time favorite quotes from Dr. Chris and Dr. Marivic is the line that goes, "It's habit forming. Even the smell of the paper sends signal to the brain that it is working time." This daily protocol that they refer to in answering LAS is an integral part on how we establish routines for our students, most especially those with autism. There are 3 important aspects in handling children with autism. First, we need a stable environment. Second, we need a consistent routine. And third, we need small, achievable goals. This third aspect, the small achievable goals, is also in perfect alignment to the rule in making LAS that complex tasks and lessons are to be divided into small steps or several sublessons. In special education, we call the breakdown of complex tasks into small achievable steps as task analysis. We do this for functional life skills as well as learning activity sheets. As you see here, we have some of the learning activity sheets of our special education students. The third component is the in-school comprehensive portfolio. We have no homeworks. The students do everything in school, and we compile their works in a report called the progress report, and we give it to the parents at the end of the school year. We even include pictures of the activities that the students did in this report. The last one is the strategic study and rest period. We also have this on Wednesdays, but we call it the Multiple Intelligence Social Formation Program. During this day, our kids have water therapy, or art or music therapy. We also have one group that cooks together merienda, and then they sell it to our teachers or to our parents. In fact, because of this, they were able to save enough money with the income that they made, and without asking for money from their parents, they were able to open their own bank accounts in China Savings Bank. This is actually a feature of our students in China Bank's magazine. Because of our belief that our SPED students did not have disabilities, but just different abilities than those that we regularly see, we were able to seamlessly implement the components of the CVIF-DLP into our SPED program. But just when we thought that everything was going smoothly already, then came the pandemic and the news that there will be no face-to-face classes this coming school year. The important question now is DLP still relevant? The answer is a big yes, through online learning. We still retain the implementation of the 4 components. There can be parallel learning groups of 2 or 3 students in an online class using Zoom or Google Meet. The learning activity sheets can either be emailed to the parents or be picked up from the school on a weekly basis. We can still compile all these, whether online or the hard copy, so that we can come up with a comprehensive portfolio. The strategic study and rest period will be retained, but will focus on psychosocial activities that will help the students and their families adjust to the new normal. Now, since all this will be implemented on a new playground, the online system, the biggest consideration is that the school will have to work closely with the home for the benefit of the child. How? As teachers, we should practice what we preach. And remember, our preaching is always in achieving the 21st century skills. Then let us apply that to ourselves. Let us communicate closely with our parents so that we collaborate to come up with creative ways on how to make this online learning possible. Because even with the surefire CVIF methodology supporting us, let us not forget that it still takes a village to raise a child. So the CVIF DLP, the new normal? Definitely a yes. Thank you very much and God bless us all.
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Marian. See you later again. For everyone's information, La Salette School of Dagupan was accredited by the Bernidos and is a certified DLP school. So from elementary, we go now to junior high school. Our next resource speaker is one of DLP's senior ambassadors. Napakalaki ho ng kanyang puso. Talaga namang buong tapang niyang sinusuong yung mga malalayong lugar kahit po takot na takot siya sa mga ahas. He has championed DLP, di ba Sir Desi, kwento mo yun? He has championed DLP not only in his own school, but has also helped us so many others, including those the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. Please welcome all the way from Davao, the junior high school principal of the Davao Christian High School, Mr. Desi Magnaye.
Hi, Sir David.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to share to you our experience. So I'm Desi, and I'm the junior high school principal of Davao Christian High School. And before I formally start with my presentation, and while waiting for the presentation to be on the screen, yes, there have been a lot of experiences that I had in going to different communities to introduce the dynamic learning program, and I hope that through this web forum we'll be able to understand it better and consider it as an alternative as we move to the new normal. So next slide, please. So allow me to share briefly what our school is. So Davao Christian High School is a non-stock, non-profit educational institution that was established in 1953 by the Davao Evangelical Church to provide quality education to learners in Davao City or nearby areas. In 2005, the school decided to implement the dynamic learning program in the high school department after hearing the Bernidos speak in a seminar. This school year, this will be our 16th year of implementation. So what will happen in the next 15 minutes? Next slide, please. So I am going to divide my talk into 3 parts. First is I'm going to share with you what we did before and during the pandemic. So I say during the pandemic because of our different school calendar. We start in July and end in May. So when classes were suspended in March, we had no choice but to do online classes for 6 weeks. So later, I'm going to share to you our experience of holding that using the CVIF-DLP approach. Second is I'm going to briefly share with you what's up with school year 2020-2021. And hopefully, with this sharing, I can convince you and you can consider it if CVIF-DLP is really the way to go. So next, please. So again, let's do a quick review of our non-negotiables. And in Davao Christian High School, for the past 15 years, we have followed the 4 non-negotiables of DLP. So if you're a math teacher and you are supposed to teach a math class 4 times, in a traditional setup, you will be doing that in 4 separate hours. But in CVIF-DLP, you can teach simultaneously 2 to 4 classes, which will lessen the contact time with your students. So because you cannot be in 2 places in one time, that means that the classroom becomes automatically learner-centered because they need to do something while you're not there. And when we talk about doing something while the teacher is not there, that means that we need to provide them with independent student activities. Next, please. So independent student activities are daily learning activity sheets that are created by our teachers. They are well-designed activities, and they need to be copied by hand by our students, and they need to be answered independently without any prior lecture. Why do we do this? Number one, because we think that by copying, it allows students to retain more the information that they need to learn, and it actually slows down their brain. And secondly, there is no prior lecture because it will develop their critical thinking skills and help them become better independent learners. Because they do a lot of activities, next please, they need to file that in a comprehensive student portfolio. So in Davao Christian and any DLP school, you won't see any notebooks, but rather color-coded portfolios or folders. So if you see a blue folder, for example, that means that math time na. Pag green, science. Pag Filipino, yellow, for example. So when you look at a child's portfolio or a student's portfolio, you can track the progress and see how much the student has learned from the beginning of the school year until the end of the school year. Next, please. And because students do a lot of independent student activities, we promote or we practice strategic study and rest periods. Wednesdays are reserved for non-academic subjects like MAPE, and we strictly enforce our no homework and protect the weekends policy. So these are the things that we have been doing before the pandemic happened. And you might be wondering, for the past 15 years, what kept you going? Of course, there should be results. And if you look at the next slide, you will see there a table showing how our students have improved in one of the tests that they take yearly, and that is our NCAE. So if you look at 2017, 2018, 55% of our learners has a percentile rank of 99 plus, which means that 55% or more than half of our grade 9 students belong to the top 1% in the entire Philippines. And almost 80% of our students belong to the top 1 to 2% in the entire Philippines. This is just one of the many success indicators that we look into that make us believe or that convince us that DLP has greatly contributed to what our learners are and in achieving the goal of making them independent learners. So because of the pandemic, next please. So how did learning continue? A while ago, I said that we had 6 weeks of classes left last school year. So when the crisis was ensuing and there was a very big chance that classes will be suspended, what we did was we conducted a survey. So we had to map our student profile. Next, please. So mapping the student profile meant that after doing a survey, we realized that all our students have access to a device and they have internet access at home, which allowed us to think of a platform to use in order for classes to continue. Next, please. Next, please. So because all our students own a gadget and have internet access, they were invited to a Google Classroom. So it's a very common online learning platform, and it becomes a repository or a portal, parang storage ng lahat ng kanilang materials. There, the students can see the activities that they have to do for the day, what are the things that they are going to accomplish. So it's like school, but doing it at home. because it was something new, we had to orient both our teachers and our student. And lastly, one day after the class suspension, we resumed classes immediately using the CVIF-DLP approach. I think I want to emphasize at this point that our transition was more manageable because one of the key adjustments that we had to make is the transition to an online learning platform. I want to emphasize the readiness of our students here to learn independently, whether they are inside the classroom or outside the classroom. Next, please. So for the next few slides, I'm going to explain to you how we did it during the class suspension brought about by COVID-19. So we still had parallel class scheme. We had no choice. All the kids are in their homes. So a teacher is simultaneously teaching 100 to 160 students all at the same time. But because the teacher cannot be in every house, the interaction happens with the learning activity sheets that the teacher provides. If you notice, next please, this is an example of a Google Classroom wherein the student will know that for this subject, these are the things that they need to accomplish for the day. And because the studying in an online platform is also different, we had to revise our schedule. And one of the things that we had to do is allocate enough time for subjects so that they won't be able to, they'll be able to learn better on a day-to-day basis. So the second component is the activity-based multi-domain learning. A while ago, I told you that we provide our students independent student activities, but since they're at home and we use an online platform, we upload our learning activity sheets in Google Classroom. Still, our students copy by hand. Next, please. And if you notice on the left side, you see there a typewritten learning activity sheet. So here, that's what the student would see in Google Classroom. And once they see that, they automatically know that they're supposed to copy that. And after copying and answering, they take a photo of it or they scan it and they submit it to the teacher. But one of the things or one of the common misconceptions of people when they hear dynamic learning program is lahat lang ba ng ginagawa ninyo ay magsulat. Most of our activities are written activities, but it's not limited to that. So the next few items that you will see are just some of the outputs of our students that they did during the class suspension for 6 weeks last school year. So these are just sample performance tasks, our assessments to gauge if our students were really learning. Next, please. So here you see performance tasks that can be done digitally or manually that were uploaded to the Google Classroom, and students submit it in the same portal, which means that learning still continued even if we were at home. Next, please. So what's next? Because it's already we're already done with the school year and we're planning for school year 2020-2021. These are the things that we realize. I'm going to break it down to 4 things. Number 1 is we want to evaluate. One of the things that, one of the blessings in disguise that we had last school year was we were able to conduct online classes because of our different class schedule and school calendar rather. And because of that experience, we want to improve on our performance or our conduct of online classes. So we want to use the survey results that we gathered to improve our online classes based from our experience last school year. When I talk about evaluate certain aspects in terms of number 1, posting of materials, the schedule, how can we have better teacher-student consultation in an online platform? Can there be remediation, for example, in an online platform? Paano ba natin matutulungan yung mga batang kailangan ng tulong kahit na nasa bahay sila? Second one is, we want to continue the essentials. So this is something that we have been practicing even before. So that means that in order for us to see what are the important things, we had to look at DepEd's MELCs or the most essential learning competencies in order for us to check what are the most important things that our students need to learn for that school year so that they can move to the next school year. Next because we are using an online platform, I think it is very important that we equip our teachers with the technological skills that they need so that they can confidently and effectively teach in an online setup. And lastly, we hope to communicate better to our students and parents what they can expect for next school year. We also want to reiterate a parent's role in becoming facilitators at home. How can they remind their kids, for example, of the daily activities? And this is one of the good things about dynamic learning program, because intervention is very minimal. So why do we continue CVIF-DLP during COVID-19? Next slide, please. Because of 3 reasons. Number 1, students become independent learners. Next, when I say independent learners, because of the program components that we practice, there are habit-forming protocols that are achieved that results to better learner disposition because of the learning activity sheets that are designed by teachers to make students learn independently. There's minimal supervision, which means that students are able to continue learning even when they are at home. Second is teachers take advantage of the leverage the LAS provides. Just imagine all your students will submit to you answers to the activity. So that gives you an idea already how much they know or what are the things that they need to learn. And using that result, you can customize your discussion so that you can highlight misconceptions in the lesson. And lastly, more than the content coverage, in DLP, values are concretized. Next, please. You know, the importance of self-discipline, academic honesty, and being composed amidst difficulty are learned because independent learning can be challenging but doable. So I think I want to end here by saying that even though we use technology in order to make sure that learning is continuous, it is still important that you're backed with a sound teaching pedagogy. What do I mean by this? Because of DLP, which is a solid teaching pedagogy, it helps us achieve our learning outcomes. And because of that, we are guaranteed that there's effective learning because it helps promote independent student learning. So if you're a school implementing dynamic learning program, I hope that you appreciate it more, especially in this time of the pandemic. And if you are a school which is considering, I hope that you can you have enough courage to try this out because it is not conventional, but the results are the results that you get are very fulfilling, that makes the work worth it. Thank you and God bless.
Desi, magkita ho tayo mamaya doon ho sa ating panel discussion. Thank you so much. Now, for our viewers, if you want to experience the kind of stories of La Salette and Davao Christian High School in your own schools, these are the 3 easy steps to follow. Send us a letter of intent to adopt DLP in your school, district, division, or region and send it to learnsmart@smart.com.ph. Join the Dynamic Learning Program Facebook for updates, best practices, or to ask for support and to share your strategies. And 3, visit dlp.ph to learn more about DLP. The good news is that for Smart, Sun, and TNT, subscribers access is free. So, from our junior high school, punta naman po tayo doon sa senior high school. Another common question in DLP is, does it also apply to public schools since the School of the Bernidos is a private school? To answer that and to share their expertise and experiences and how they are preparing for the August 24 opening of classes, our next panelist comes from DepEd Bohol Division, which has been implementing DLP for almost 10 years. Please welcome, all the way from Bohol, the Senior High School Coordinator of Hagna High School, Dr. Nalven Acenas.
Thank you. Hello. Hello, David. Thank you very much for introducing me.
Hi, sir.
Okay, so Pleasant afternoon to everyone. Mayong hapon kaninyong tanan. I am hoping that everyone is staying safe right now. So I will be sharing to you our way of adapting the CVIF Dynamic Learning Program in Hagna High School. Before going to the core of my discussion, let me share with you our brief history of our school. Our school was established in the year 2012. It is situated in Bungamar, Hagna, Bohol, where catering grade 7 students only then. We have only 5 teachers, only with one overseeing principal from nearby secondary public school. Now, we are a complete basic education with 30 teachers and one school principal. Since we started the school, we are using the dynamic learning program. So our highlights of CVIF DLP implementation in our school. First, we uses the learning activity sheets or LES. In learning activity sheets, the activity title of course is present, the learning target, concepts or even the vocabulary sections, and of course the exercises. Then the teacher's intervention is very minimal or even zero. The teacher will just come in to discuss for deepening purposes and clarification on the part of the students. Then we have the modification of parallel classes. Why modification? Because sometimes our teachers in public school, we are busy. But however, the essence of writing the concept notes and answering the exercises prior to any discussion or deepening is observed strictly. And then, of course, the strategic rest is practice. The academic subjects are done only on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Wednesday is a rest day, it's MAPI period. Everyone is playing at school, then doing some activities and remedial classes. Then, this is our high school performance indicators. Now, as you can notice, this is from 2013 to 2016 only. Our promotion rate is very high. It's increasing in the year 2014 to 2016. Failure rate, it's decreasing. I'm very happy for that because our students are really trying not to go to school and they are very excited going to school always. Then repetition rate also is decreasing, and lastly, our dropout rate is zero from 2013 to 2016. Then for our NAT exam for the National Achievement Test, for our National Achievement Test, from the start, because it's a new school in 2013 2014, most of our students are transferee coming from public schools. Unfortunately, we got a very low school score in the NAT. But in the year 2014 to 2015, there is an increase of the NAT exam, and we are happy for that because of the DLP also. Then now we are in the pandemic period. Our school decided, now this is the excerpt from our rationale of the LCP, the Learning Continuity Plan, that we have to ensure the continuity of learning of the K to 12 learners under the new normal. Hagna High School chooses now the CVIF Dynamic Learning Program as an educational modality. Hence, it is disaster resilient form of education program. Knowing also that majority of our students are coming from the poor sector. So we decided in the school that we have to go on to the dynamic learning program. So our LCP action plan, first we did our pre-implementation program. In the pre-implementation program, we crafted the LCP, then submit copies for approval and communicate our LCP to our stakeholders. Then next, for the teaching and learning preparation on the LES. Of course, this is the time that our teachers do some modification of the LES coming from the division office. Then our stakeholders orientation announcement, and then the implementations of the DLP. Next slide, please. Fast check of DLP. First, we have the minimal intervention or even zero intervention of a teacher will do. Hence, the learning activity sheets are very simple, easy to be understood, and step-by-step targeting the learning competencies. Third, the dynamic learning program develop, train, independent learning, and other values like honesty and industry. And then fourth, it is less cost or economical because the students will be only using the ball pen and activity sheets. Then, our best practice of the DLP for during this time is that the learning activity sheets are distributed in weekly basis and strategically be studied and performed at home. Only the parents or guardians with quarantine pass are allowed to get and pass the learning activity sheets. Then for our stakeholders, I know another best practice, the comprehensive students' portfolios are graded quarterly, and for non-readers, teachers will have an extra effort to home visit the identified non-readers. For the support of our stakeholders, we are very happy because our division office of the Division of Bohol is very supported. They disseminate and enhance learning activity sheets ready for use. And then our LGU also, the local government unit, we are very thankful to our mayor because the HAGNA LGU will provide duplicating machine, one for elementary and one for secondary. So as a school implementing the dynamic learning program, we are very sure that in this time of pandemic, we will still continue our delivery of education through the dynamic learning program. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you and
Salamat
God
po,
bless.
Dr. Asenas. Thank you so much for joining us. Mamaya ho, magkita tayo sa discussion, panel discussion. Now, another successful story from our partner school implementing DLP in senior high school, and to which they also started rolling out DLP to their selected tertiary levels, meaning college, is Eastern Quezon College. Please allow me to introduce from Quezon, Ms. Hazel Gamasan, the Bachelor of Elementary Education and Senior High School Program Coordinator of Eastern Quezon College.
Hello, good afternoon, Sir David. Thank you for that kind introduction. Magandang hapon po, fellow educators. I am Hazel A. Gamasan, Program Coordinator of Eastern Quezon College for both senior high school and BEd programs. So before I share our practices on how we conduct the CVIF-DLP in our school, so let me give you a brief background of the institution where I currently serve. So can I have the first slide, please? Next slide. Yes. So Eastern Quezon College is a private non-sectarian institution in Gumaca, Quezon. So it was founded by Dr. Vicente R. Villar in 1947, and its current president is Dr. Arnel Pedro V. Rodelas. So it is among one of the schools under the supervision of the Department of Education in the Division of Quezon. Next slide. So currently, the school has 90 teaching and non-teaching employees. It offers complete basic education course with 929 students, of which 174 are senior high school students. It has 3 colleges in the tertiary level, the College of Education, College of Business Administration, and College of Arts, with 929 students all in all. It also offers graduate study programs, being an extension of Marinduque State College graduate education. So currently, we have 116 enrollees in the master's and doctor program. So next slide. So though we are private institution, majority of our students are beneficiaries of the government subsidies such as the senior high school voucher program and the educational service contracting of the Fund for Assistance to Private Education. Thus, our school has to look for an alternative but effective delivery mode of instruction to our learners. According to Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So since we took that initial step of using the CVIF DLP, there was no turning back on our part. So let me share with you our CVIF DLP journey. So the idea of the DLP was introduced to us by our visionary school president, Dr. Rodelas. So in April of 2017, together with our school president and fellow program coordinators, we flew to Tagbilaran City in Bohol to attend the 7th CVIF DLP training at Bohol Tropics with no less than the founders of the program themselves, Dr. Christopher and Maria Victoria Carpio Bernito. Next slide. So after the training, we immediately looked into the profile of our learners, the school resources and the school curriculum, and discussed ways on how we are going to implement the new program beginning school year 2017-2018. Since then, the CVIF DLP has become part of our annual in-service training for teachers. So here are the glimpses of the series of seminars and workshops conducted from 2017 to June 15 of 2020. So that was on the screen is our first faculty training for the basic education faculty members. Next slide is our second faculty training, again for the basic education faculty members. Next slide. On the third run of our in-service training on the implementation of the CVIF DLP held last May 20 of 2019, we had the faculty members from the tertiary level together with the basic education teachers as our participants. The inclusion of the college faculty members in the group was initiated by Dr. Rodelas because he would like to introduce DLP to the tertiary level. So beginning first semester of the school year 2019-2020, selected teachers in the college level started to use Learning Activity Sheet or LAS as part of their teaching strategy. I can say that it was a very timely decision for Dr. Rodelas because we had just started the second semester last January of this year when COVID-19 started to spread and affect the landscape of our educational system. When the entire Luzon was placed under ECQ last March 16, the operation of the school had to stop and we were all required to stay at home. We have to think of an effective and immediate solution to allow our college students to finish the semester while they are at home. That was when the use of the Learning Activity Sheet or LES came into full swing in the college level. So based on the report of the department coordinators during our EXICOM last June 16, most of the students were able to comply with their course requirements through the use of the LAS. So on the screen is our fourth faculty training. This time we have the senior high school teachers who shared their best practices to the elementary teachers. Given the current situation, the elementary department of our institution will also apply the CBIF DLP among the elementary pupils. Therefore, they need to revisit the program and review how it will be implemented effectively. So in the pipeline is a follow-up training for college faculty members this coming June 19 and 20. So next slide. Way back in June of 2017, we were very excited to introduce DLP to our stakeholders, the parents and the students, but to initiate change from the traditional approach to the CVIF DLP approach was not an easy task. There were challenges from the parents and the students alike that we have to overcome, particularly during the first few months of its implementation. The students even joke that they have grown an extra finger, referring to their callus or calyo in Tagalog, because of the period of time that they have to spend in writing the concepts. Even the teachers had to adjust to the program. They even suggested that they are like brand models of this particular um, brand of detergent powder because they need to have bisa ng 10 kamay in checking the students' LAS. But as school leaders, we have to motivate and let them see the reasons behind the practice. So eventually, our stakeholders started to embrace the program. So for 3 years prior to the pandemic, the senior high school adheres to the components of the program, which are, next slide please. Okay, next. Next. Yes, on the screen are the non-negotiable features of the CVIF, the parallel classes, the activity-based, multi-domain learning, the strategic study and rest period, and of course, the in-school comprehensive portfolios. Next slide. Okay, on the screen is an example of how we conduct our parallel classes. So this is the class program of grade 11 Humanities and Social Sciences section. So at 7:30 to 8:30, we have the core subject oral communication in context. In the same way, the ABM section as well as the gas section are also having their oral communication and context with the same expert teacher and the same facilitators. So the school conducts parallel classes on core and applied subjects with the exception of the specialized subjects since we only have one section of each strand in the academic track, gas, HUMS, and ABM. So notice also on the screen that every Thursday, we consider that as our strategic rest period for our students. So they have mentally less demanding subject in the morning, which is their PE class, and in the afternoon, they have individual consultation or remedial work with their teachers. So this could also be possibly used for other extracurricular activities. In line with the strategic rest period, the school also observes no homework policy. So since the students are in school from 7 to 5 p.m. and they only have 1 hour vacant period to do their task for the following day, so they cannot bring their learning activities at home. So they have to finish their schoolwork in school so that after the school period, when they go home, they can spend more quality time with their parents and with their friends. So next slide. On the screen are some of the classroom scenarios during regular sessions, examination period, and the application of the activity-based multi-domain learning. So we have to take into consideration that there is no introductory lecture given by the expert teacher before students work on the activity. So lectures, discussion, and interaction are always done after the students have worked on the learning activity. So this practice helps our student to perform individual tasks to help them to become self-sufficient and good problem solvers. So inside the classroom, the students talk less, but they do more. So this also follows the Montessori method, never help a child at a task at which he or she can succeed. Next slide. So initially, DLP was developed to address concerns regarding mathematics and science subjects. But on the screen are pictures of our students applying the DLP to other different learning areas. Next slide. Yeah, the students are also required to prepare comprehensive student portfolios, which is actually the compilation of all their learning activity sheets for the entire semester. Through this, the students can monitor their own progress. And as you would notice, the cover of their portfolio showcases their artistic and creative ability. Okay, on the next slide is a comprehensive teacher's portfolio. So the teachers are also required to prepare their own portfolio containing all the learning activities, depth and learning competencies, long examinations with table of specifications, and key answer. Next slide. With an easy access to the internet, the students become more familiar to pop and contemporary cultures. Here at Eastern Quezon College, we like to train our students in developing Filipino cultural values. That's why during school programs and culminating activities in physical education, we encourage our students to perform Filipino songs and dances. Similarly, during the celebration of our college week, aside from the sports like basketball and volleyball, we have Palaro ng Lahi to introduce the students to the Filipino games. Through these essential features of the DLP, we were able to develop our learners holistically. So at the end of the school year 2017-2018, 76 out of 105 of our grade 12 students passed the state colleges and universities entrance examination near our locality. In the following school year, 74 out of 100 passed the entrance examinations in the same state colleges and universities. Now on the screen is the recent accomplishment of our students. So for this school year, they even ventured to uncharted territories by taking and passing the entrance examination to University of the Philippines and qualifying examinations for notable scholarship programs like TOST and SM Foundations, and even a full scholarship for international students in the University of Alabama in the USA. So this might probably seem ordinary for other schools, but for us and for our students, these are new experiences, and we consider this as our achievements also. Next slide. Okay, so these are our target state universities. Next slide. Okay, so the development of our students to their full potential wouldn't be possible without the help of the government and the private sector. So on the screen are some of the activities of the students wherein we tapped the government and the private sector. Next slide. Okay, so as we look forward for the opening of classes this school year 2020-2021, we see ourselves still implementing the DLP program because we have seen the effect of the DLP program to our students. So, but there will be some modifications or a little bit modification in how we are going to implement it this year. We have to modify the program in line with the guidelines of the different agencies involved. So since we are not allowed to have face-to-face session, there will be no parallel classes to be conducted this school year. But the other components of the DLP will still be implemented. So our school will be utilizing the hybrid learning, which is a combination of remote learning online and remote learning print. So on both modalities, the students will still receive the same learner's activity sheet with its three essential components: the learning content, the example, and the activity, but through different modes. So the teachers have roughly 2 months prior to the opening of classes on August 24, and so they are now very busy at home preparing the LAS. So in this period of uncertainty, due to pandemic, the success of the students' learning progress depends on the collaboration of the school, the family, and the community. So the students are expected to be at home. The parents must help the school in monitoring the students' performance. They will also be responsible for the mind setting of their students. The teachers, as always, are ready to assist every learner according to given schedule. They will also provide monthly consultation with the parents regarding the students' progress. So for those who will be receiving their lessons in print, the school has to coordinate with the barangay officials for efficient and safe distribution and collection of materials, again, as scheduled. So according to an African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. So with the collaboration of the school, the family, and the community, we believe that there will be no Filipino learners who will be left behind. So if the CVIF DLP program works for us, it can also work for you. So as we contemplate on the future of the education landscape of our learners, let us remember this famous line from Confucius, which is clearly aligned to John Dewey's principle of learning by doing, one of the key principles that supports the CVIF DLP. I hear and I forget, I see and I believe, I do and I understand. So from Eastern Quezon College community, we thank you for allowing us to share our practices of the CVIF DLP. Good afternoon.
Ma'am Hazel, maraming salamat po sa inyong presentation. We'll see you later at the panel discussion.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is also one of the ambassadors of the Dynamic Learning Program. With his extensive experience in implementing the program as a science teacher in the formal school and now as a focal person of the Alternative Learning System or ALS in Region 10. Kami po sa DLP ay naniniwala na ang ALS at kung paano ito ginagawa ng maraming taon na ay ang model para sa new normal. And that the formal school could learn so many things from them. Without further ado, all the way from Cagayan de Oro, please welcome Dr. Ray Butch Mahinay.
Hello, Sir David. Thank you very much for that one. Before I proceed, let me extend my greetings first to our Assistant Secretary of the Alternative Learning System, to ASEC GH Ambat, and of course to our ALS Task Force, headed by Director Marilet Almeida, to our Regional Director in Region 10, Dr. Arturo Bayucot, and to our Assistant Director, to Dr. Vic De Gracias, to our CLMD Chief, Ma'am Epra Magnaong, to everyone, especially to my ALS family in Region 10, maayong hapon sa tanan. So rather, I have a unique way of presenting my part because I'll be sharing some of my experiences as a science teacher in the formal school and how I am banking with this experience so we could improve our learning interventions in the alternative learning system in Region 10. Next slide, please. It all started in the year 2011 and 2012 when the DLP Learning Physics as One Nation, or LPON, was introduced in the division of Cagayan de Oro City. So I was one of the DLP writers in the science subject. And it is indeed a game changer for me because my physics class ranked first in the National Achievement Test in the entire Cagayan de Oro City public and private schools in March 2012. So in that picture, you can see me with the Bernidos. Okay, next, please. So I really had a hard time in finding this picture, but this is my first DLP LPON class in Tablon National High School for the school year 2011 and 2012. I can really say that this class honestly performs on the average level only. But with my intervention or with our intervention with DLP, they managed it really to excel and to really rank #1 in the National Achievement Test for physics. So that goes to show that no matter what is the background of your students, but with a proper intervention with the DLP, you can really maximize their potentials to the fullest. Next, please. So for 7 long years, from 2011 to 2018, I was consistent in using the dynamic learning program in my science classes in the formal setting, and as well as in my senior high school classes, particularly in the practical research class. And what is really groundbreaking here is that my co-teachers were also asking for my learning activity sheets for the research, for them to understand what is research all about and for them to do action research. So it is really enlightening for me that my learning activity sheets, which was intended for my learners, were being maximized by the teacher. So it really came in handy for them because they understood the concepts well in research for the teachers. And in this picture, it is somewhat heartbreaking for me because it is in year 2018 that I had my last DLP class with them, because it is in this year that I was invited to join in the division office. And in that class, one student approached me and she said, "Sir Butch, dili ko gusto ma-stop ang DLP nato." So she was referring that when one new teacher would replace me and will not continue the DLP, so it was she was kind of anxious about it. So I told her that I will tell the new teacher to continue with the DLP. So with this sharing of my student, it is both heartbreaking and reaffirming for me that the DLP can really do wonders with our students. Okay, next please. In those 7 years, I had my DLP stints, not only in Cagayan de Oro City, but in partnership with the School of Education at Xavier University. We did DLP orientations and even consultations at Surigao del Norte parochial schools, as well as in the Bukidnon Jesuit schools. So it is really a good experience for me to really sharpen and hone my DLP knowledge and how I can share it to them. And in the year 2017, ALS CDO invited me to speak about DLP. So back then, at this year in 2017, I was still a formal school teacher, and in that year, I believe that is the birth of the DLP in the ALS, no, in the alternative learning system. Okay, next please. And in the 2018, I had the opportunity to be trained as a DLP ambassador. And with me in that picture are our CDO implementers. We have Dr. January Gay Valenzona. We also have here Betchen Linaak, and we have Jmar Coquilia. So it was in that experience that we were taught on how to be DLP ambassadors. Okay, next please. Now in this picture, this was in year 2018 when ALS CDO did validation in their prepared learning activity sheet. So I was invited again as a content expert. And in this experience, it was really enlightening for me, such that after the activity, I really went to the nearby church in the St. Augustine Metropolitan Cathedral, and I really prayed for the ALS CDO. I asked for the guidance for them to really excel with what they do, because I really believe in the causes that the ALS are doing, being the non-formal delivery partner of the Department of Education. And you know what? God really answered our prayers, because of this experience, I was invited to join the division office as the division coordinator for the alternative learning system. So it was really life-changing for me, being a die-hard science teacher, with me being turned into an advocate of the alternative learning system. Next, please. So while I was in ALS CDO, one of the milestones that I am really proud about is that when we launched the shared option, shared would stand for the Senior High Alternative Responsive Education Delivery Option. So basically, it is the delivery of senior high school in alternative mode. And we introduced this in 2 facilities. First, in the BJMP in Cagayan de Oro City Jail, and in the second facility in the Department of Health Treatment and Rehab Center. So for this program to sustain, we had preparations of the learning materials. Okay, next slide, please. So we can see here that we did DLP write shop for the senior high school core subject. So these learning activity sheets will be intently be used by our learners in the shared option. So our writers here are senior high school teachers who are really content experts. And seeing that the result of this is very positive, we extended the write shop to other subjects. Next slide, please. So we did the DLP write shop for subjects in the general academic strand and for subjects in the tech, voc, and livelihood tracks. So again, these learning activity sheets are for our shared option. So we have here a sample of the cover design of the compilation of the activity sheet. And this was designed for us by our ALS implementer in Cagayan de Oro City, Mr. Willie Caldo. Okay, next please. So in this slide, in the year 2019, so I was invited by SMART to do a DLP training with ALS Iloilo City. So it dawned on me that that the DLP is really spreading. So not only in ALS Cagayan de Oro City, but also in Iloilo City. And it came to me also that that there were also other ALS divisions that were also implementing the DLP, such as the ALS Naga City. Okay, next slide, please. So also in the year 2019, I was requested by our director to join the regional office as the regional ALS focal person. So with my experience of the dynamic learning program in the formal school and believing on how good it is for our learners, so in phase 1, we did this development of contextualized learning activity sheets. So this is composed of the education program specialist for the ALS, also with the DLP ambassadors in Cagayan de Oro City and some mobile teachers who had experience already in doing the writing proper. So our main output for phase 1 is that, in the next slide please, is that we were able to had a walkthrough of the newly released curriculum guide of the alternative learning system that was in December 2019. So we were able to have a look with the learning competencies. We articulated it, and then we integrated some of these learning competencies, such that we were able to arrive at a certain number of learning activity sheets. So in this slide, on phase 2, so this is now on the writing proper of the learning activity sheets, because in phase 1, we were able to have an inventory of titles. So in phase 2, just last Thursday, so we did an online orientation with our writers and content experts, to which the SMART team was with us, as well as with the ALS Task Force, with Director Ma'am Marilet Almeida. So I made mention in this article that indeed, just like what Ms. Hazel mentioned, that it takes a village to educate a child. So with that, I mean that it would involve various stakeholders for us to be successful in this project. Next slide, please. So with this, as you can see, we identified 98 writers who are mobile teachers in the alternative learning system, and then we involved the 45 division focal persons and the EPSAs to help us in the monitoring, and then we tapped 7 teachers from the formal school system to be our content expert. And of course, the Smart Communications is there for us for technical support, and later on in the provision of anti-plagiarism tools, such that later on we will be really proud of our activity sheets, that it is of academic honesty. And it is really challenging at this point because we cannot do the write shop in face-to-face or in actual session, but we maximized Facebook groups to organize our writers and to do file sharing and to have consultations and critiques and all that. So yes, we are making it possible. Next, please. So what is our basis on why we are doing this? So what is it that I am anchoring on if we really want to improve our delivery of the alternative learning system in Region 10? So of course, I will always go back to this model, which is the curriculum instruction assessment model. This is fundamental in educational management. So we have three words here. We have curriculum, instruction, and assessment. For the curriculum, this is already in place since the ALS task force released the curriculum guide for the ALS 2.0. Now, for the instruction part, this is where the dynamic learning program would come in. And then later on, I will be explaining to you why DLP can help us in our instruction in the alternative learning system. And on the third word, you have there assessment. So we already have existing ALS process, assessment processes, and we'll just have to strengthen it. For a start, we are already doing the improvisation of the individual learning agreement, or the ILE, especially in the new normal. Okay, next please. So why is it that the dynamic learning program is good in the alternative learning system? So let me present to you briefly 6 points. First is that DLP aligns with the andragogy features. So in the alternative learning system, our learners are adult learners. So therefore, some basic pedagogical concepts may not be practical. And according to Knowles, who is the father of andragogy, and his colleagues Holton and Swanson in 1998, they said that adult learners behaves in the concept of self-directedness and practical orientation to learning. In the dynamic learning program, we are honing our learners to become self-directed, to become independent learners, and to become disciplined in the learning process. And I believe that the DLP would really fit in the andragogical concept of the alternative learning system. Second is that DLP conceives to be inclusive. According to the Bernidos in 2010, DLP is a differentiated and target-oriented program, and it is effective for learning under multiple socioeconomic and cultural constraints. Indeed, our learners in alternative learning system comes from different background, with different nature, with different needs, and therefore we cannot take all the learners come in one big class and then discounting them of their individual needs and background. So therefore, we need to have them in a way that it is 1:1, and DLP is actually like that. In DLP sessions, learning is individualized, and with that, we can really consider the different background of our learners. Hence, it is inclusive. Next slide, please. DLP fills the gap on teacher expertise. We did a survey this year in ALS Region 10, and it revealed that around 70% of the ALS teachers are graduates of Bachelor in Elementary Education. I believe this is a misconception before, that if you are an ALS teacher, you should be an elementary teacher. Therefore, with that, there are more of generalists than specialists. And that for me poses a big problem, because our ALS teachers are expected to teach higher concepts. In alternative learning system, junior high school level, we already have algebra, we have trigonometry, we have chemistry, we have physics, and that is beyond their training in college. So therefore, the DLP activity sheets would come in handy for them. It is already prepared, it is simplified, and therefore they don't have to skip these topics, because again, the materials are ready and available. Next is that while ALS teachers do well in managing their sessions, the survey also uncovers that some learning strands are left out, which I cannot blame our ALS teachers. Sometimes they have to leave the math, the difficult math topics behind. They have to leave some science topics behind. And even in the digital citizenship, which is the learning strand number 6, we even have basic web designing, and who among us can really teach that one. So we cannot really blame them. But if we can complete all the learning activity sheets from learning strands 1 up to 6, then there's no more reason for our ALS teachers to leave these topics untouched. Fourth, the DLP concurs with the portfolio requirement. So based on DepEd Order 13, 2019, our DLP learners will have the two things. First, the work folder, which is actually a repository of evidences of learning. And second one, a presentation portfolio, which is merely a collection of best output culled from the work folder, and it will be used in the as a requirement in the accreditation and equivalency test. And one of the features in DLP is that we have already the comprehensive portfolio. So therefore, if our ALS learners will do the portfolio, then it's good saying, it is good to say that we are already complying with the requirement in the A&E test, which is the portfolio. Number 5, the DLP addresses motivation issues of ALS learners. So this is one of the recurring concerns of our ALS teachers, that our learners are not motivated, manifested by being so late in coming to their sessions, or they appear very randomly. And that's because they've been out of school. I mean, they've been out of school for so long, and there are really some things that are affecting them. But according to the Bernidos, DLP students follow set procedures that foster habit formation for focused and sustained learning, just like what was being shared by our previous speakers, that the mere sight of the paper and pen will already create a trigger switch in their brains that it's already writing time. And if that is the trend, then our learners will become motivated in the process. And lastly, number 6, DLP fits to the multi-grade design in the ALS sessions. Our ALS teachers are like Superman and the Superwoman of DepEd, because in one learning session, they handle 3 groups of students all at the same time. They have the basic literacy group, which demands more attention because this is more of the basic writing and basic numeracy. Then we have elementary, and we have the junior high school. Again, all of these 3 groups simultaneously. And if a teacher has no system on how to handle these 3 groups, the teacher will become so overwhelmed and gets confused in the process. But if we are going to apply the DLP parallel class scheme, the teacher can attend to one group while the other groups are busy attending to their learning activity sheets. And indeed, the Bernidos mentioned that DLP parallel classes scheme will foster process-induced learning instead of being teacher-centered. So all of these 6 points, I believe, are strong points enough on why we have to proceed with our plan in the Region 10 with the DLP for the alternative learning system. Next slide, please. So in closing, as my end note, my spirits and my hopes are high that we can finish our write-up of the contextualized learning activity sheets before the opening of classes in August. And it's somehow sad for me that for our pilot implementation, it falls in this time of pandemic. But on the other hand, I am so positive that this is our best weapon, this is our best response in the new normal. So thank you very much, and mayong hapon sa tanan.
Salamat po, Dr. Butch. We'd love to see other educational institutions across the country experience the benefits of dynamic learning program. Here are the 3 easy steps on how you can be a DLP implementing school. Send us a letter of intent to adopt DLP in your school, district, division, or region, and send it to learnsmart@smart.com.ph. Join the Dynamic Learning Program the Facebook group for updates, best practices, to ask for support, and to share your strategies. Visit dlp.ph to learn more about DLP. The good news is that for Smart, Sun, and TNT subscribers, access is free. At this point, we will call our speakers for our Q&A. Handa na po ang ating mga viewers. So may we request our panelists to turn on their videos, but keep their mics on mute. We have once again Ms. Marian Tanlor, President of La Salette Dagupan, Mr. Desi Magnaye, Junior High School Principal of Davao Christian High School, Dr. Nalvin Asena, Senior High School Coordinator of Hagna High School, Ms. Hazel Gamasan, Bachelor of Elementary Education and Senior High School Program Coordinator for Eastern Quezon College, and Dr. Ray Butch Mahinay, ALS Focal Person for Region 10. Magandang hapon po. Now, Ang dami hong mga nagtatanong kanina, no? We collated all the questions. Ito po sila, babanggitin natin ang pangalan and then yung question. This goes to all of you, or to who can answer. From Placeo Genaa, how can CVIF-DLP be sure of the outcomes or the outputs of the learners since there is zero teacher participation? Hindi kaya mga parents or guardians lang ang nag-a-answer ng kanilang activity sheets? Please turn on the microphone if you want to answer po.
Okay, that's a very common question being asked if a school wants to implement dynamic learning program. Of course, I can answer it in two ways. Number one is when you make a very good learning activity sheet, and that's the primary role of a teacher, to design a very good learning activity sheet wherein there's zero or minimal teacher intervention. When that happens, a student is able to learn it on his or her own. With regards to parents or guardians answering their own activity sheets, this is one of the things that is also emphasized in DLP, yung pag-concretize ng values, na hindi lang importante na matalino ka, hindi lang importante na may alam ka. Ang isang napakalaking impact ng DLP sa akin is, aside from the habit-forming protocols, it reminds you to be honest, it reminds you to be disciplined. So I think we can incorporate that in our orientation, making sure na these learning activity sheets, most of them are formative in nature. And because they are formative in nature, wala siyang grade, it's not graded. It does not have any bearing sa grades ng bata. So when that happens, learning becomes less scary to the kids. It will be okay for them to commit mistakes kasi doon sa mga mali nila, doon makikita ng teacher kung ano yung dapat nating i-discuss during the discussion. And that's why ito yung mga built-in mechanisms ng DLP wherein mas napropromote yung independent learning, even if there is minimal teacher intervention.
Thank you, Sir Desi. No? So tama, I mean, maganda yung sinabi mo na DLP is created in a way that, it addresses the basics of education. So if something is formative or evaluative, nagkakaiba-iba ng gagawin doon. But rest assured that the dynamic learning program is created really with empirical evidence and very scientific. Salamat po. The second question I'd like to address to Dr. Nalben. From Rosa Alma Olitokit, how do you teach the skills on the junior and senior high without the actual hands-on required?
Thank you. Question is, how do you teach the skills on the junior and senior high school without the actual hands-on required? So I have to repeat what Sir Desi said, that the learning activity sheets should be very carefully designed by a teacher, wherein that students can really understand the simple instruction of the skills or the exercises in the activity sheets. Therefore, the skills can vary, in different ways. For example, in activity, so the teacher should make sure really that the instruction is very clear. That's the first thing, the first one, so that the students can actually answer or can actually perform the skills, give kung ano yung hinihingi doon sa kaniyang exercises. So that's the important thing. So there's no actual hands required from the teacher, but it doesn't mean that the students will just do handwriting all the time, because sometimes the exercises varies. So there are a lot of performance exercises in the sessions. So that's it. So
Thank you,
still
sir.
effective for the DLP.
Here's a follow-up question. Pwede daw ho bang i-translate sa Tagalog or sa Filipino language or other dialects yung ating learning activity sheets? Sir Butch?
Yes, pwede.
Ay, Sir Nalben? Pwede ho.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Pwede. It's important, if the students cannot understand. Kaya nga meron time yung tinatawag na vocabulary section. In the vocabulary section, it doesn't mean na English lahat yon. Pag it's a difficult word, for example, in mathematics or in science or in English, so the teacher can contextualize that word into a Bisaya para mas maintindihan. For example, if you are Visayan, para mas maintindihan niya kung anong ibig sabihin ng word. So, doon pa lang, very simple na yung kaniyang activity, so mas naintindihan ng bata. So, no worry, it doesn't mean that learning, if that is English, no, it doesn't mean na English lahat. So, kung kinakailangan, ibisaya mo siya para mas maintindihan ng mga estudyante.
Salamat po, salamat. This question is for Ma'am Marian. Paano po kapag hindi marunong magbasa at magsulat ang mga bata sa elementary? Paano implement ang dynamic learning program? Ma'am, the microphone po, naka-mute na.
Sorry. Sige. So as I mentioned a while ago, we have two types in our special education. So we have those who are in the mainstream program, and we have the other one in our who undergo the individualized educational program. For our mainstream program, these are already the students who can read and write either in Filipino or in English. So sila na yung nakakasama sa regular classes without shadow teachers. But for our students who are who would need individual intervention by our SPED teachers, we translate the learning activity sheets into task analysis or into learning tasks. So of course, we start with the basics and we try to teach them the skill of reading like phonics through learning activity sheets. So it's basically the same process, only that you lessen the level of difficulty, and so it becomes more task-oriented para with the teacher supervision or sometimes minimal teacher supervision, the student is still able to attain the task that you need, whether it be for learning the phonics or learning syllables or learning how to read the word families. So nagagawa nila yon through a series of multiple exercises. So you break down the task. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Marian. For Ma'am Hazel, here's a question. Are you using online method this coming school year? Do you feel you are ready to start with DLP?
Definitely, as I have said in my presentation earlier, we are going to have online, both synchronous and asynchronous. And then, of course, we will also have the modular approach. So, in line with that, prior to the start of the school year, we already conducted a survey among our students and among the parents who among them can subscribe to online, whether it is synchronous or asynchronous, or who among them would like to have their LAS delivered.
Thank you, ma'am. For Dr. Butch, how do you measure or how can you say that DLP is effective for your learners? Okay, sorry. Mukhang nagkaroon tayo ng technical problem with Sir Butch. Ito po, how will you do evaluation using DLP? Dr. Nalvin, would you like to answer that? How do you do evaluation for DLP?
Okay, the evaluation of the DLP, if you will go back to the learning activity sheets, now the learning activity sheets, you have to make sure that everything is in the learning activity sheets, the learning target is there, the concepts is there, and then the exercises is there. So the evaluation may come in the exercises, but you have to take note that as what Sir Desi said, that it is a formative one only. The learning activity sheets is a formative one. So if you want to have a assessment that is summative for grading purposes, so quizzes may come in after the discussion of the teacher or the deepening of the teacher. So that's the evaluation comes in.
Thank you. Sir Desi, Salamat po. Sir Desi, as a long time implementer of DLP, can you expound on further on the how you do evaluation for DLP?
Okay, before the pandemic or during the pandemic, Sir David?
Both, if possible, sir.
Both. Okay. Before the pandemic, following what DepEd orders, merong written work, merong performance task, at meron tayong quarterly assessment. So, lahat ng mga learning, almost all the learning activity sheets na ginagawa ng bata ay formative in nature. So, which means na hindi siya graded. Ngayon, nung after checking and evaluating this learning activity sheets, pwede nating masabing ready na ang bata for a summative. That's the time that we can give a summative assessment. So that's how it would work before the pandemic. Now during the pandemic, in an online setup na wala sa school or classroom ang mga bata, assessments, to be honest, is very making assessments is very challenging. And that's why this is something that I want to throw again to fellow teachers. How do we look at assessments? Is it just to evaluate learning or just a tool to check if our student is learning? Because there are many ways. For example, ang fear natin kasi pag nasa bahay, baka ang sumagot iba. Online ang setup, baka pwede silang mag-Google ng mga sagot. So there are other ways or kinds of assessments na pwede nating paglaruan or pwede nating i-create in order to hit a competency. Yung pinakita ni Ma'am Marian kanina na hagdan na you can give different activities, and these activities can be in the form of assessments so that we can reach a required competency.
Thank you, Sir Desi. Here's a question from Ning Doble for Ma'am Marian. How is reading taught for beginning readers using DLP? Or for struggling readers, how is oral reading taught?
Hello,
That's a
yes.
question for Ma'am Marian.
So how is reading taught for beginning readers using DLP? So prior to the learning activity sheets, we start with teaching phonics. And then but we do not only teach this using the listening skill or purely through oral. We combine how they learn the letters and how to pronounce the letters. We combine that with worksheets. So tactile na rin sila. It's visual, it's auditory, and it's tactile. So learning becomes faster. They get to see the letter, they get to name the letter, they hear it, and they write it. And because of that combination, then learning how to read becomes faster. And eventually, after the students have mastered their phonics and then the word families, then we progress slowly into the learning activity sheets. So as we mentioned, the breaking down of the learning task is very important. We do not start out immediately with a big goal. We break it down into small steps. Sometimes we don't start at once with the writing. We still start with flashcards, we still start with teaching them, but eventually along the way, we progress into the learning activity sheet already, because learning by doing and by using all your senses, as they mentioned, really activates most parts of the brain. And so even for special education students, and especially for our young learners, the learning becomes easier and faster and deeper.
Thank you, ma'am. For Ma'am Hazel, we have a lot of questions. Ma'am Hazel, I think mahirap isipin ng mga college implementers yung DLP gagamitin sa eskwelahan nila. How can you encourage them to use DLP? What are the practical steps?
Okay. So with regards to that, for the previous semester, we used only the LAS. So we have to do it one step at a time. So we have the essential components of the DLP, but one of the challenges, I guess, is who among the college professors will be designated as expert and who will be designated as facilitators. It's one of really the challenges that we are thinking for a long period of time. But with regards to the students, we have to slowly initiate them into the process by, like what I've said, introducing first the LAS. And we had this opportunity when the pandemic struck. They were able to finish the semester by using the LAS. However, one of, again, challenges is that the integrity of their output. So because,
Yeah.
I always say to my students, honesty is not when somebody's watching. It is when nobody's watching. So I like what Sir Desi mentioned earlier. We do not only develop the mental aspect of the students. We have to develop them holistically. So therefore, if we if we develop their values, I think we will be able to uh, we will be able to have their output in such a way that they do it with all honesty. And then, like what I mentioned earlier, we are going to have our next DLP training for the college instructors tomorrow and on Saturday. And this time we are going to initiate the instructors in the other aspects of the DLP. So we cannot really have an instant transition from the traditional to the CVIF DLP. So we have to do it gradually for the tertiary level.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Nalvin, meron hong tanong dito. Maraming ganitong tanong. Ano daw ho ang feedback ng mga teachers, parents, at students nung sila ay nag-DLP?
We started the school. Okay, when we started the school, it's the Bohol division already embraces the dynamic learning program, so they are used to of it na. But the feedback, the very feedback of the parents that they are into it, I mean, they are okay for the dynamic learning program kasi their students are really trained. Now their students are really trained to be honest and to work independently. So yung mga estudyante nila, yung mga anak nila daw, hindi na nagiging tamad, no? So palagi nang pumapasok sa eskwelahan yung mga anak nila at natutuwa na yung mga parents nila kasi palagi nang pumapasok and they are excited to go to school kasi if they will not go to school, nahuli na sila sa mga activity sheets nila. So they are happy for that. So yun ang feedback ng mga parents natin.
Salamat po. Ito po, question for Dr. Butch. How do you ensure that you're able to measure DLP effectively for ALS learners? Yeah, for Sir Butch. How do you measure or how can you say that DLP is effective for your ALS learners? Or siguro maybe medyo malakas kasi ang ulan sa CDO ngayon, ano, mahirap yung ating signal. For Miss Marian, please, how do you ensure that it is still the student that does the activity sa bahay? Or Sir Desi, yung nag-i-implement na sa bahay ng DLP?
Well, as was consistently mentioned by all panelists, honesty is the best policy. Also, apart from that, it's because the activities are handwritten. Diba? So, hindi natin maiwasan na baka may mga times na talagang dinikta yung sagot ng parents ng answer.
Opo.
But the mere fact that they write the concept digest by hand, it means that they were able to process. They read it, they understood it, and they wrote it down, meaning kahit papano, nag-sink in sa kanila yung concept. So that in itself is already a foolproof evidence na kahit sa 50% man lang, may pumasok dun sa konseptong yon sa bata. So that's one way. Tapos second, yun nga yung sinasabi ko na honesty is still really the best policy and that we really encourage our students to do it on their own because that's how they learn. Thank you.
Sir Desi, baka meron kang gustong idagdag?
Yeah, just to piggyback with what Ma'am Marian said, One of the good things in DLP, and this was very evident when we had to do online class, and even before that, is it doesn't mean that when you do independent learning, it's only you and you that will have to answer. So in the absence of a teacher, peer collaboration or peer help or tutorial becomes very high. Which means na kung hindi nakakapagtanong ang bata sa teacher, pwede siyang magtanong sa classmate. Kahit sa online, pwedeng mangyari yan. Kasi kahit na hindi natin pagsabihan ng mga bata, they have their own group chats. They can text, paano ba ito? So with that system, hindi ganun natatakot ang bata na kaya ko ba itong sagutan na ako lang mag-isa? Kasi merong mga pwedeng tumulong sa kanya. And I think that's one of the beauty of the learning activity sheet. And again, if an activity is well designed and prepared by a teacher, then it's easier to achieve that required competency. There is challenge, but the challenge is manageable that will allow the student to push and go towards the required competency.
Thank you, Sir Desi. Ito ho, merong mga practical questions dito. Ma'am Hazel, you might want to help answer. Paano itinuturo ang DLP sa mga merong physical activities like physical education, music, arts, ganyan po?
Okay.
Your mic.
Yeah, I think I already switched it on. For the senior high school, we conduct the DLP LES. So first, the teacher has to craft a well-designed LES. So the steps on, like say for example, if they are going to perform a Filipino dance, so the steps should be clearly stated in the LES. So each of the steps, the figure, and then of course it's normally if it's a dance, it's a collaboration of all the participants, so they can exchange ideas on how they are going to perform the activity without the intervention of the teacher, and then they can have consultation later on. Of course, prior to the presentation on stage, they have to consult their teacher, but then they have to present first what they have in mind, and then the teacher will have to make some corrections or improvement in the presentation that they did before putting them on the stage. So that's how we do it in the senior high school.
Okay. Salamat po. For Dr. Nalvin, may tanong din dito, paano ba ang grading ng mga bata? At paano nagpapa-quiz? Paano nagpapa-exam using DLP? Siguro galing sila sa nagsusulat kasi.
Okay. That is during prior the pandemic. Okay, prior the pandemic, what we usually do in our school, for example, during quizzes, we do not, for example, tomorrow, this day we will be having our quizzes, but it does not necessarily that when the teacher comes in the class, the teacher will not necessarily give a quiz right away. The teacher will give a chance to study first their concept notes for about 10 to 30 minutes or 15 minutes for a review from their concept notes. Kasi yung concept notes nila, yung portfolio nila, hindi nila madadala sa kanilang mga bahay. So for a review, the students will study for review 10 to 15 minutes. Then after 10 to 15 minutes, then the quiz comes in. So that's the time now the teacher will give the quiz. So retention is still there. Walang problema.
Salamat po, Dr. Nalvin. Si Mas Marian, meron daw siyang sasabihin. You were raising your hand, ma'am.
Just to clear the misconception that when we do CVIF-DLP, it's not all writing. So, kasi yun yung question na nabato sa akin, tas kay Ma'am Hazel din. So, it's a combination. It's a combination of writing, but we still do performance tasks. We still cook in TLE, we still do oral recitations, we have oral exams. So it's a combination. It's just that in DLP, the written aspect is given more emphasis since it's harder. But once you're able to once the concepts are already integrated, mas madali nang lumabas yung oral aspect, yung performance skill ng bata. So it's not just
Yes,
written
ma'am.
for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd like to request each of you, starting with Miss Marian, a very short message for those who want to implement DLP. Marian, please.
For those who would like to implement the dynamic learning program, it's difficult at first because it's something new. It's not the traditional way of teaching. But when you are able to embrace the philosophy and you're able to see the benefits, it's worth all the struggle, it's worth all the difficulty, because once you and your students and your parents are able to embrace this pedagogy of learning, then I believe that we can all move forward and heal as one nation. So for CVIF-DLP, go tayo dyan.
Thank you. Sir Desi, please, your very short message.
Okay. Kayang-kaya ninyo yan. So, good luck and God bless.
Dr. Nalvin, please.
For me, no, I am encouraging all the public schools to apply the dynamic learning program. Kung nakaya namin, makakaya niyo rin yan. So, just believe, no, kasi yung DLP, Dynamic Learning Program, it's already proven and tested. So, kaya niyo yan. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po sa inyo. Palakpakan naman natin sila kung nakikita natin sila. Maraming salamat po. Thank you for your questions sa ating mga viewers. And again, if you have more questions that were not brought up in the discussion, please put it on the comments section of this live event in the Dynamic Learning Program Facebook page so we can answer you. Ay, Sir Desi, yeah, salamat po. Thank you to our panelists. Sir Desi, sorry, please, your message, please, to our schools who want to implement DLP.
Done already, Sir David.
Okay, salamat po. Thank you to our panelists and good luck on the opening of the classes on August 24. God bless you. We have been repeatedly talking about the learning activity sheets or LAS, but what does it look like? Please focus your attention on this very short video on the anatomy of a learning activity sheet. We will be discussing the learning activity sheets in more depth in tomorrow's web forum, including aligning it to the most essential learning competencies. So please tune in tomorrow. For now, as a key takeaway on the LAS or learning activity sheets is that it is like a lesson plan. However, it is designed to be learner-centered. The students themselves have to read it, copy everything, understand, analyze, and answer the exercises on their own without prior lecture or parental intervention, again, to develop students to be independent learners. Again, as a reminder, if you want to experience how it is to implement DLP in your own school, ito po ang ating mga easy steps. Send us a letter of intent to adopt DLP in your school, district, division, or region, and send it to learnsmart@smart.com.ph. Join the Dynamic Learning Program Facebook group for updates, best practices, to ask for support, and to share your strategies. And visit dlp.ph to learn more about DLP. The good news is that for Smart, Sun, and TNT subscribers, access is free. And that concludes day 2 of the No Learner Left Behind Education for All in the New Normal web forum. For those who wish to watch the discussions again from day 1 and day 2, you can do so because these are all saved in the Dynamic Learning Program Facebook page. Join us again tomorrow for the last day of the 3-day web forum. Again, you can see the addresses being flashed on the screen below. Like the DLP page, okay? Like the DLP page and join the Dynamic Learning Program FB group to meet other DLP implementers. Visit dlp.ph. Don't forget, till then, keep safe.